Nós vamos continuar agora os
We'll
nossos
carry on
debates,
now our
investment
debates.
landscape for agribusiness in Brazil and Africa, agriculture 4.0 and agri-finance for the future. This is the theme of the discussion now in the rapid fire panel promoted by the SouthBridge Group, who is the co-organizer of the Brazil-Africa Forum 2020. I'm going to call now Hamet Aguemon, partner of the SouthBridge Group. Hi, Hamet.
Hello, Caroline. How
Hello.
are you?
Nice to see you again. I'm very fine. Thank you very much.
Indeed.
Are you ready to start the rapid fire panel
Ready
of
as
the
ever.
day? So please, it's up to you.
Perfect. Thank you, Caroline, and thank you for the kind introduction. And let me welcome all our viewers from all over the world. I know we are competing against an undecided election somewhere north, so we appreciate everybody's presence with us today. My name is Hamet Aguemon, and I'm a partner at SouthBridge. The topic of agriculture, especially in Africa, has been going on for ages in terms of potential for sustainable development, but the statistics seem to remain static. Does that mean that nothing has been done? 65% of the world arable land is in Africa. Africa uses less than 2% of its renewable water source, and this compared to a world average of 55%. The yield gaps are far below expectation compared to other regions. Cassava is 2.5 times below best practices. Rice, corn, milk are respectively 3.5, 10 times, and 20 times below best practices. Post-harvest losses run 15 to 20% for cereals and up to 50% for perishable products. 70% of the world cocoa beans come from 4 West African nations, but we only capture about 6 to 8% of the value chain. Less than 30% of harvests are processed into value-added product versus 98% in developed countries. Yet, by 2030, we expect that African food and beverage market will represent a 1 trillion opportunity versus about 300 billion today. Africa currently spends 35 to 40 billion on food import. There is therefore an exciting opportunity as well as an imperative to drive an inclusive and sustainable transformation of agriculture in Africa. In less than 3 decades, Brazil has changed from a net importer of food to a net exporter due to increased production and productivity, and thanks to the government agricultural programs and policies on food security. The expansion of agribusiness production and exports has boosted economic growth in Brazil, contributing to its rise as an emerging economy and a major player in the global food system. So how do we learn and adapt the Brazilian model on African economies? How do we leverage new technology to fulfill our agricultural revolution and ambition? To further our thought and address some of the questions, I have a distinguished panel of 3 experts. Andrew Ali, CEO and partner at SouthBridge. Faiçal Benameur, Senior Vice President at OCP, East Africa, and Fabiano Pinto, Export Manager at Eurolatte do Brasil. A friend of mine told me this weekend that to be successful in Africa, you need to understand and control the whole value chain. This could be true for the agricultural sector. Dear Faiçal, let me start with you. You're a Senior Vice President at OCP, one of the biggest fertilizer companies in the world, if not the biggest. You're at the forefront of the cycle. What are your thoughts and how is OCP trying to unlock the value chain potential? The floor is yours.
Good morning, Hamet. Good morning, Fabiano, Andrew, Caroline, and the rest of participants from all over the world. Thank you very much for giving us this opportunity to share some thought through this wonderful bridge between this wonderful transatlantic bridge between Brazil and Africa. First of all, let me precise that our biggest source of pride is that we are an African company. So it's not the fact that we are the biggest fertilizer manufacturer over the world, but the fact that we are African company with African roots. And with the fact that we have been involved in farming all over the world, dealing with learning from the best farming practices over the world, I think we have today the obligation to share some good practices with our African farmers. It's obvious then, as you said, Africa have a great potential regarding agriculture, with only two numbers. If to make it short, 60% of uncultivated arable land, as you said in the beginning, but also 60% of population under the age of 24. That means a huge forces, but that are seen today as a threat because of the high rate of unemployment, where agriculture, once developed, can absorb this threat and make it a real forces for Africa. And beside this, we have a big market, and the money is there. Africa is importing today $50 billion of food from outside. And this number is going to reach $100 billion by 2030. That means the market is there, the potential is there, and the market is there. But what is the problem? It's kind of, it's kind of the fish biting its own tail. We doesn't have enough investment in industrial agribusiness transformation, because they fear of lack of feedstock, and on the same time, we doesn't have enough investment in commercial farming because of the fear of the lack of an offtake. And this is really the dilemma. We have, and I think here is why this platform is very important. We have to learn from the success story in Brazil. Brazil have been in 2 decades changing the game from a net importer of food to a net exporter of food. And today the export of food is one of the highest source of GDP for Brazil. And so lesson learned to offer to African countries and African policymakers this kind of package where we bring around the table. We need those strong sponsors, and we are hardly working to join the game and to tie hand with African leaders and African decision makers to bring around the table the people who will invest on commercial farming and the people who will invest on local industrial agribusinesses transformation. You cannot imagine that. Just few examples, and you can see how ridiculous it is. In Ethiopia, for example, a country where you have 100 million heads of livestock, 100 million, we are still importing packed milk because the level of the dairy industry is very weak, and half of the milk production is lost. In country like Congo or Gabon, where it's rain like every day, they are expending 30 to 40% of their oil export to buy food, where they can export to buy food and to buy meat. Today, meat production is about farming. 60% of the cost of meat is soya and corn. So we can, and today we doesn't have this kind. We are still importing a huge quantity of food oil, where Africa is the largest producer of oil seeds. We need just to bring everybody around the table, and by fact, it's a bankable project. We are not asking for subsidy. We are not asking for charity. We are just asking to bring around the table all people to structure comprehensive and end-to-end businesses from farming to industrial transformation. I'm talking about chocolate production from cocoa bean. I'm talking about sugar production from out of sugar cane and juice. 80% of the juice, packet juice sold in Africa are imported from outside Africa, where our mango, our pineapple is lost in this supply chain.
Thank you so much, Faiçal. I think you made extremely key point. One that always speak to us is one of the first things you say is that agriculture can absorb the youth coming coming to the market force. Given that we must create the numbers varies, but between 13 and 20 million jobs per year. Agriculture can absorb that. So
Yes.
we really need to sit down and think.
It's about absorbing the huge employed youth in Africa. It's about one of the big crises today in Africa is the imbalanced trade, the imbalanced trade and the access to forex.
Absolutely.
When we are still spending $30 billion as hard currency to buy food from Europe and from USA.
I think you are absolutely right, and I can see you are as passionate
inside Africa
as we are when we talk about agriculture in Africa. And you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. You emphasize on some of those irregularities because we have the raw product, but we are not taking advantage of the value-added product down the line. And one of the points you made, obviously, and this is one thing that characterizes OCP, is that you're trying to bring some of those key players along the value chain together, because we don't need subsidies. We don't need, this is a bankable project that we need to work on. And hopefully we'll get time to come back into that. Another point that you made is there is not enough investment in agribusiness. There is not enough people coming to invest in commercial farming. So maybe let me use that as an opportunity to turn on to our... Sorry, go.
Small point,
Sure.
as a linkage with Brazil. And today, the success story we have in Brazil are limited by the fact that we are observing that agribusinesses in Brazil is still focused inside Brazil, and they are exporting from Brazil, but they are not investing on agribusinesses asset outside Brazil. Today, it can be the linkage with this Africa-Brazil forum to invite those successful investor in agribusinesses line in Brazil.
Absolutely.
Come to Africa.
And Africa. And I hope they're listening to you. I hope they're listening to you, because that's the key message and that's the key objective of this forum. We need Brazilian investors. We need them. And I see Fabiano is smiling because he will bring a lot of them. And I know he's been involved already a lot in Africa. But let me take that opportunity of the lack of investment and financing that you mentioned, to turn on to Andrea Lee, Group CEO of SouthBridge, maybe to discuss how do we, I said earlier that the statistics seem to remain the same. So how do we unlock that 1 trillion opportunity? How do we get more investment? And how do we unleash that potential that we've been speaking, for several years now? Andrew, I think you're on mute.
Thank you. And thank you for the introduction. I think just to lead into that, and as has been mentioned here, agriculture is actually a very important sector in Africa already. On average, it accounts for something like 30% of GDP in many or most African countries, and up to 60 or so percent of employment as well. Although the problem is that, and has been said, there's a lot of low productivity, lot of lack of use of proper inputs to increase productivity, lack of economies of scale. And these point to some of the roadblocks that need to be broken down in order to drive that investment. I think Hamet in his introduction mentioned that you need to control the value chain. And I think when you're looking at projects in Africa, because of the chicken and egg situation that Faiçal mentioned, who is the off-taker, who is the provider, one way to do that is by either bringing together a coalition of people who can do both, or one company that's trying to do both. And if you look at some of the larger scale successful agribusiness companies who are operating in Africa, you will see, and I'll just cite Zambia as an example. This produces proteins in Zambia and Southern Africa, so meat, chicken, etc. And they actually produce their own grains for the feed, and they produce those grains at world-class levels of yields. And so because of that, they have the value chain and they're able to do that. A successful business in the food end of the spectrum is Indomie, which introduced instant noodles into Nigeria and other parts of Africa. And there, the value chain they own is more from the manufacturing down to the distribution. So I think that one huge opportunity is in sort of trying to control more of the value chain. The other opportunity I think comes around infrastructure. So as Hamet mentioned, a lot of food goes to waste. It can be 30 to 50% depending on the type of commodity. And this is at least in major part because of lack of things like cold storage, proper transportation. And therefore, again, investments in this, which can support many different agribusinesses, I think can be quite profitable and can help to break the logjam. And then, of course, there's the value addition. So taking chocolate, cocoa and making it into chocolate, taking cassava and making it into starch or whatever the outputs are. Those add a lot of value, a lot more value actually than probably growing the crops. And therefore, again, there are investment opportunities. There are also a lot of people around looking to provide financing. Today, this is led obviously by DFIs who are very interested in promoting this sector in Africa because they see all the benefits we have spoken to. And to be frank, there are probably they probably have more money today than they can actually invest. So I think that if you can come up with good projects, you find investment. And for me, this is the real beauty of this discussion, because what we really need in this continent to unblock everything is expertise. People who have done it, people who have the expertise, and that's what Brazil has in abundance. I mean, you have shown the world how to be the top producers in things from soya to chicken to all kinds of other produce. The other point I think that's very important for Brazilians is if you look 10, 15, 20 years into the future, the arable land is in Africa. So you want to start making a toehold here into Africa now so that you can be a player in the continent in 20 years' time when things start to focus here much more. We at SouthBridge, we're a financial advisory group, and we help people make investments in different markets. We've helped some large Asian companies move into various commodity sectors in West Africa. We're here, and there are other people who are here to help you if you want to put your projects together, if you want to enter a particular market, if you want to raise financing. I'll leave it at that. There's a lot that can be said about agriculture.
Thank you so much, Andrew. I think that was great. And you mentioned, obviously, for everybody to hear that there is a lot of opportunities, essentially in controlling the value chain, opportunities in infrastructure, opportunities in value addition, of course, and there are financing available. There are financing available mainly from DFIs, but above all, what you said is what we need is expertise. And that expertise, the Brazilians have it. So why don't I turn now into Fabiano, who is from Brazil and who is a senior Eurolatte do Brazil. Fabiano, thanks for being here. And, as it's been said, Brazil has made tremendous standards and became a global player today. How do you view the African potential, and what does it take to emulate Brazil today and become a net exporter and a big player from the continent? So I'm giving you the floor now. Thank you.
Thank you, Hamet. A warm hello from Brazil. I've seen Faiçal and Andrew speaking, and we look to be very line up on our thoughts. Regarding Brazil, Brazil has a very long experience to be one of two major export on food in the world. And it was based in just one simple word, knowledge. We developed from maybe 40 years from 40 years to now, we developed an expertise that was based in investigation, training, investigation, training, investigation, training. We develop institutions that create clusters, production clusters, which train people, which develop technology, adapt to our tropical production conditions. And this is maybe a very strong bridge to we bring to Africa what Africa needs right now. Talking about Africa, Africa is probably located in a very strategical position to be one of the biggest food producers in the world, and is very close to be exporting this production to Europe and to Middle and Far East. As we talked before, we have in Africa an abundance on arable lands that are still uncultivating. The cultivated lands we can boost into get a higher productivity. We have one of the better situations on youth labor force. That means that Africa continent will more than double its population, and the half of this population will be by 2050 will be under 25 years old, as we have listened also from Faiçal. And the fresh fresh water source is available, especially in sub-Saharan countries, through rivers, lakes, and good rainfall average. But ironically, also under the Saharic countries in Northern Africa, bring together the largest concentration of aquifers on the continent. So it's a matter of adapt which product we will need to produce under which conditions. Also, beside of that, we have an abundance of minerals, oil, and gas resource that would complete a competitive list for fertilizer and energy supply to drop food costs, food production costs. So I would say that I've read this morning in another panel somebody asking. Saying that China is already in Africa, and how Brazil technology could be competitive against the China technology. Probably what we are focusing right now is not to export equipment, is not to export technology, but is to implement a knowledge facilitated by some tools that we produce it, we test it under similar conditions that is producing on the tropics. I think our successful in Brazil was probably based on these issues, on training, on teaching. And on Africa, I'm traveling to Africa after 20 years, And I know many different countries, and I learn in Africa that we need to respect and we need to understand their needs. We cannot arrive with the final solutions.
Well understood. Very good. Very good. I know I have people telling me, we are almost done, that we should wrap up soon. Although I want to address that, we started with 10 minutes late, so we intend to, to complete our time, but we will try to wrap up very quickly. Fabiano, thank you so much. I think you perfectly answered the question that was raised. I mean, the point that was raised by Andrew Ali in terms of expertise. And if I try to get one word from each of you, Faiçal said that we have everything in Africa. We have all the resources. We should be a major player. Andrew said, what we need is expertise. And you said, you have the expertise, and this is what you're trying to implement. And you're happy to implement that in Africa. So what I'm saying now is, if I put all the three of you into a company in Africa tomorrow, given that by 2030, we need to become a 1 trillion opportunity, and we are only at 300 billion today. There is 700 billion that needs to be created. I'm sure you will be able to make up for about, 100, 200 billion of it. But the reality is, there are tremendous potential, tremendous opportunities. And, you mentioned earlier a question that was asked between, competition between China and Brazil. My response to that will be very simple. There is no need for competition. There is 65%, over 60% of urban land. We are happy to work with everybody. We are not at war with anybody. We are happy to welcome all our trading partners, all our partners, to make sure that we contribute to that food security. Maybe as a closing, if every one of you can potentially give us your last word of advice onto how to if there is one thing that needs to be taken from you between now and in the next 10 years, what would you say? Faiçal?
Let's say investors should be attracted by growth and by the potential and by the growth. And the company I will form with Fabiano and Andrew will be the best receptacle for investors. So join our company.
Absolutely. Andrew?
So I would say that to me it looks like there's a match made in heaven between Brazil and Africa, because really what you have is what we need. What we really need is expertise in how to bring these projects together, get them to world-class production levels. The other things you need, the inputs, whether it's the natural resources, whether it's the fertilizer, and the funding, and of course, lots of people are already, there or can be made available. But what we need is for people to, take that step and leave your country and come to another continent to try and do something different here. And the rewards can be absolutely huge if you do the right things.
Absolutely. Fabiano?
As we have seen, we have very favorable biogeoclimatic conditions for producing food. So I would say that it is also very, very important to remember to create a positive political, financial, and legal environment to host these investments. It cannot be just policy from a special party or government, but it should be a state policy for a very long-term implementation.
Thank you so much. I think the message is very clear. Bet on the future, bet on Africa, bet on the growth. With that partnership that is growing between Brazil and Africa, given the same climatic condition, that expertise can be transposed and adapted to Africa, as our CEO Andrew Ali mentioned and yourself, Fabiano. So hopefully by next year, we'll be able to reconvene to that meeting and see how that company has evolved and what have been, the throughout steps that have been taken. With no further ado, maybe I will ask Caroline to, I don't know if we have, time for question or answers. Otherwise, the floor is yours, Caroline.
Thank you, Hamet, and these great panelists. I'm very pleased to see that we are going to engage further than this forum, because Mr. Faiçal has already said that there's going to be some business happening, if I understand correctly. I'm correct, Mr. Faiçal?
It's absolutely, Caroline.
This is really nice, because this is the main goal of these discussions, right? To put all of you together, to meet each other, and to foment some of these future projects. Hamet, we have received lots of comments here. Let me try to address one, because we indeed have a few minutes before we start this amazing panel. There's a lot of questions regarding resilience, because much have been said about the need to promote business and to promote investments, but also to promote resilience in the people and in this field of business and trade. I don't know if maybe one of you can add some inputs regarding this thought, in this specifically regarding this time of pandemic we are living.
If I may comment on this, Caroline, today more than ever, the question of food sovereignty and not food security, I mean food sovereignty, is on the top priority of all African countries. Today, with this, what happened with this pandemic and the closure of border that occur as soon as the first stress is felt here and there, shows to African countries that we cannot anymore count on importing food for our population. If it's not exporting, at least for the time being, produce all the needed food inside our countries, or at least sub-regional hubs. And I think all the policymakers now are very aware about this resilience plan that should be now more than ever implemented in all African regions.
If I can just add, a number of the things that we've been talking about around investment opportunities will also help to create more resilience. So, for example, building the infrastructure so that less food gets wasted. For example, building the ability to process food locally rather than sending the raw materials out and buying the fully processed food back. These things also help to build resilience. They help to shorten value chains, which, as we've seen in this pandemic, can get very easily broken if something goes wrong.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Elling. Thank you very much, all the panelists. And Hamet, we have reached the end of this session. It was a pleasure to be here listening to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.